Thank you very much. The first is, I don't know if we have learned a lot. The only thing that I know, we don't know how to stop the increase of stones and the increase in recurrence. The evolution of man has come a long way from the conditions of poverty still present in some areas today, and to the high quality of life achieved in healthy countries. Stones have been always there as part of human life and one of the cause of pain and misery. We know that stone's composition has been changing from the past until today. And from ammonium acid urate in the Paleolithic Egypt to the oxalate stones that we have today. This subject is in time. Look, this article in the Times just a week ago. Feast and famine are related to stones. And we know that the historical Western countries, stones of the poverty disappear after the 1930, but in developing countries, they are declining, only declining now. Well, endemic bladder stone disappear due to improved nutrition, maybe. The rising in rich countries due to overnutrition and associated regulations, maybe. Well, we know, and we have been talking yesterday for a lot of time about things that we already think we know something about the evolution from the bladder stone to the kidney stone. We know something about the age of first stone that comes early. We know that the male-female ratio has changed. We know a lot about pathophysiology of stone growth. We also know that environment is responsible for some people for everything. And we also know that associated conditions, and I want to mention special education. And we will deal with this later on, or maybe tomorrow in another part of the communication. And special when I talk about education is education for the doctors, and special for the patients and politicians also. We all know that the age distribution of stones in the 19th century in Europe is something like in Asia in the 20th century, and we know the picture that we have today. We know that we have evidence from all Europe and from all the world that there is a dramatic change from the bladder to the renal stone in Finland as early as 1907 to 1954. We know that the same happened in West India, and you can see the difference in the 60s and in the 90s relating one stone to the other. We also know that the prevalence of kidney stones increased in the last quarter of the 20th century, not only in the States from what exceeds 12% in men and 6% in women, but in Japan, Asia, Europe, Middle East, and so on. And the same happened with the ratio male-female decreasing in all the countries and also in India. Look what's happened in Europe and the States. We have different figures from country to country, probably due to the methodology of the investigation, but figures are going up. Even if you look for countries where they make province by province or different studies show us different figures in incidence and prevalence, but what we know, they are going up. In German, if we look to incidence and prevalence in 82, and the ratio man to woman also changing, but the only thing that we can say, prevalence increase from 1.28% to 6.70 with increasing age. In the States, in the early days in 1956, you have in different states the figures, but later on, you see the prevalence is more than 12% in men and 6% in women, and also increase with age. And prevalence in 2003, we have older males with more than 12% and young black females, more or less 1%. Asian and Hispanics fall in between. In Japan, we have a lot of information about Japan. What I want to tell you is the incidence is going up very fast. And not only going, the incidence increase in all age groups, except during the first 3 decades of life, and the peak age for both men and women has also increased. The only thing that I want to tell is they relate the monthly expenditure of food by the families of stone formers was significantly greater than that by the families and the non-stone formers. You see the difference in 65, in the end 2005 in Japan, incredibly high. In conclusion, for Japan, extrapolation of the findings suggests that 10% of the general population, or more than 10%, can have a stone and can be expected to suffer from urolithiasis at least once in their lifetime. Look to this work made in Estonia. Those are results of autopsies, and the prevalence in the end of 1987 was 1.6%, but different from 41 to 51, much higher in men, and more than 51, the opposite, higher in women. In Portugal, we have done quite a lot of research on this problem, and we can tell you that the incidence from 86 to 98 increased from 0.2 to 0.3, and the prevalence from 7.2 to 8, and the ratio men to women was 1.3 to 1. Recently, we just are working now in this project in 2013. The prevalence increased to 9.5%. But let me tell you, the incidence in the last 5 years decreased a lot. And we think this is related with the crisis that we have now in the country. You can see this in a poster, P660, if you want more detail. Look the prevalence, male, female, in Portugal in the 86, and you can see that if you stratify by age, that is going up with age. In 93, 2009, we can tell you that stones went up between the second and the fifth decade, and the age of first stone episode is going down. Results from the prevalence in 86 and the prevalence now in 2013. Now we approach the 10 nearly, and it was 7 before. The age of first stones also show us that ladies come first, and men, the peak is a little bit later. And we have done also a study in the SWL group treated in our hospital, and we have the same thing. Ladies will have the peak early, but the ratio male-female is different in this group. This means we have treated more ladies than men. And you can see the difference in 1998 and 1999 about the peak age. In all studies that we have done, we confirm that the ratio male-female is approaching 1 by 1. And others have done the same, like scales 1.3 to 1. Even in India, if you look what's happened to the male-female ratio, coming down from 14 to 4 all along the time. And the same with incidence, the other way around, going up in India, admissions. Stone composition has also changed in Portugal and all around the world. We had in 40 years ago, 90% of uric acid stones. Now we are between 8 and 9, and infected stones just come from 15 to less than 4%. Oxalates are going up. Well, causation of renal stones. Everybody knows the conventional concept, and we are trying to put all this together, environment with external risk factors, internal risk factors. We have been discussed yesterday, but in the end of the day, we have a stone, and we don't know how the stone appears. We have been discussing yesterday quite a lot of concepts about hypercalciuria, hypocitosuria, urinary PHA, oxidative stress, all these theories, but we are not moving on. We know that the role of diet has been incriminated, not only diet, but malnutrition, nutrients, calories, special high intake of calories, vitamins, zinc, iron, and so on. And all together, we have, in the end of the day, what we call a metabolic syndrome, obesity, and related diseases that come together or separately, but they are in the same package. Look, the risk of obesity and the risk of having stones is enormous, and we know obesity is going up. Also, we know that hypertension is going up, and stones come together, and heart disease come together. We know that exposure to drugs, toxic drugs, cadmium, beryllium, melamine, and unknown ones, give the risk for stones. And we have the story about Randall plaque that we have been talking. We know that also life expectancy is going up and stones going up together. We know that the effect of temperature can give us more stones. We know that we can extrapolate it, and they have done it, and showing that in the near future, the stones in the state will be a much bigger problem, going for numbers, unbelievable ones. And the trends in neurological stone disease had been approached for the Oxford group to showing what's happened in the last 10 years, that we have been treating upper stone upper tract stones hospital episodes increased by 63% in the 10 years period. And SWL has been increased also in this country. And what we know is only open surgery is declined. Ureterorhinoscopy is going up. As a conclusion, we can't discuss not more than this. All present studies highlight the increase in all countries, not only in England. And my conclusion is, if we want to achieve good results, education, and full research on the understanding of the multifactorial mechanisms of stone formation will be the last goal in avoid stone formation. Thank you very much.